Welcome back to Arise Entertainment 360. Our first guest is an icon in the music industry and has jammed out with everyone from Duke Ellington and Miles Davis to Dizzy Gillespie and Mary J. Blige, to name but a few.
All right, powerhouse. And now he's bringing his years of wisdom and music and social justice to a podcast near you. Grammy Award music winner, musician, songwriter, producer, you do
Everything.
James Mtume, welcome to the 360.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you
And I
for
appreciate
joining
that. Was a great
us.
opening. It was a great opening.
I mean, you're a legend.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard to do.
Right. It was hard to fit it all in. It was like, he does everything.
Right.
And a lot of people, they may not even recognize the name, but everyone knows your music,
Right.
especially Juicy Fruit.
Juicy Fruit.
I know, right?
Everybody in the world has sampled that song. I mean, literally, he was playing it earlier today, and I was like,
Right.
it's not Biggie's song. And I was like,
Right.
no, it's yours.
Well, I have to thank Biggie. And when Puffy came to me and asked me, could he sample Juicy Fruit for Biggie? I said, of course. And it extended our music into the next generation.
Yes.
But I've also been sampled by Jay-Z, Nas, DMX, you know. Just been very fortunate to make that bridge to the next generation.
Well, how do you feel about sampling? Do you consider it flattery or just like, do something your own creative?
Get your own.
That's a great point. I've always had this position in this posture. You can sample, but if you want to sample me, pay me. See, in the beginning, a lot of guys were sampling other people's music and not paying them. One of the main people in the beginning was James Brown.
Sure.
People, and then, they started realizing, I think when Fugees, when they did Killing Me Softly, then people said, well, wait a minute, the writers of the original songs were like, no, you have to pay, or do your own music.
Right.
So that was always my feeling. So no, I'm not against sampling. Okay. And also, it was born out of what I call the genius of desperation. There are no more black music departments in schools, most high schools. If you go to a black community, when's the last time you saw a music store selling instruments? So the kids had to devise a way to recreate, and they kept the DNA of funk and R&B alive.
Yes, indeed, it's so true. Now, you have, or rather, we mentioned quite a lot of famous people that you've worked with or collaborated with. Now you've got to share some fun stories with us. Who was your favorite person to work with? Why? And then tell us the most embarrassing thing that has happened between you and them. Secrets, expect.
Okay. Funniest thing, there's nobody on the planet funnier than Miles Davis. Everybody thinks Miles is this very serious guy. Let me tell you a story. So Roberta Flack was always bugging Miles about, he's a great cook. So she's saying, I want you to cook dinner for me one day. So Miles said, okay. So they pick a day and a time. So Roberta gets there, I think it was like 7:30 or something. Yeah. And the door's open. So she just goes in. She sits there for about 10 minutes. Then she says, Miles. She starts calling Miles throughout the house. He doesn't show up. She says she waited till like 8:40. Then she leaves. She calls Miles up later on that night. Miles picks up the phone. And she said, Miles, I told you, I asked you, would you going to cook dinner tonight? You said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, I'd cook it. I didn't say I'd be there. So that's Miles. That's a classic Miles Davis story.
He just left her there to eat by herself.
That is fantastic. I'm using that one.
I know, right?
I said I'd cook it. I didn't say I'd be there.
I didn't say I'd be there.
But I'm not leaving my door open for nobody. I don't know about that. No.
That is fantastic.
Wow, you must be filled with stories like that because he was I guess someone you looked up to at one point, and then you started working with him and touring with him.
I played with Miles Davis for 5 years. Wow. The greatest musical education anybody could ever have.
What did you learn? What was the most important lesson?
What I learned, the most important lesson, always look forward. Never go backwards. Once you accomplish a musical form, move on. People get stuck in the stagnation of sameness. You get something and you stay there. I've never been driven for that kind of satisfaction. It's always about trying to press it. And if no one changed music more times than Miles Davis.
Oh yeah.
It was, that was just the thing. And I learned that lesson from him. And stopped. And I remember one night, I did a solo. We were in Europe, first European tour.
Why did you point at me when you said Europe?
No, I'm looking at you. You know what? I'm gonna tell you. Because when you were talking, I was thinking, and you were talking about Juicy. I remember when we played the Hammersmith Odeon. When I played,
yes,
okay. So I took this solo, man. Oh, the place went crazy, and I'm like feeling myself, and I hear a voice walk up behind me. That wasn't nothing. And my whole little balloon hit, and it was Miles. He said, "Stop playing what you know. Start learning how to play what you don't know. Now, first you got to figure out what does that mean." What he means is stop playing the same thing. There's other ways to get there.
Yeah.
Is that why you created Sophistafunk?
Yeah.
You know, I was actually going to ask, because if James Brown is the grandfather of funk, then what does that make you the grandfather?
Sophistafunk. The reason why I call it that, because coming out, again, my journey's been coming out of jazz. And then going into R&B and funk. I brought a different kind of color into the music. Like Juicy is very different. And it's not just the beat, it's the colors of the chords, you, me, and he. So we had so you got these pretty chords, but that bottom. But like the old guys say, keep that thing in there.
Well, you gotta explain
Keep that
it.
stank on it.
You gotta explain it for some of the young folks that may not understand what Sophistafunk is.
Well, Sophistafunk is beautiful colors on top of funk.
What does
in
that
R&B.
mean?
Funk is life. Funk is the thing that makes you smile.
All right now.
Okay?
You better preach.
Yeah,
I feel like dancing already and he's just talking.
Well, I know a lot of the music that started with that was because of the instruments, right?
Yes, indeed, and that's actually what I wanted to touch on
Yes.
because you played with a lot of percussion and that's how you started
Yes.
out.
Percussion and keyboards.
Yeah, so what do you think about music today whereby you have a lot of auto-tune and you have a lot of studio work and not that much live instrumentals?
Well, again, we go back to what we said earlier. What did the kids come up with? A lot of them never even seen. I had a situation where I had a young kid who'd never seen anybody play live.
Wow.
Then we came to the studio, he said, Mr. Mtume, is he actually playing that guitar? He'd never seen it.
That blew his mind.
Yeah, it blew mine.
Wow.
And it made me understand a lot of these kids grew up with no reference.
Yeah.
They've never seen anybody play. I mean, live. I mean, they can see it on TV or something, but actually there. So there's a great need to nourish that. But I also see something happening. There's a return to musicianship. I see a lot of the rappers now traveling with a live band.
That is very
You
true.
know, so I think I'm always hopeful, and I just see the music doing, you know, a 360. It's
Coming
360.
back.
Yeah,
Well, a lot of things in our society are also doing a 360 right now. We're dealing with some of the same issues we used to deal with back in the day, and you were, you know, very involved in the fight for social justice
sir.
and different
Vocal
things.
as well.
Does your music influence that, or is your music influenced by it? How does that work?
Well, you know, I've had a very interesting career in the sense of I was able to accomplish what I was able and fortunate enough to accomplish musically, but I was always politically motivated. Now, it doesn't always come out in lyrics or something, but I've always been conscious of that. I co-host a black talk radio show here in New York on Kiss FM for 20 years. And we brought everybody in, all political guests, not music guests.
#1 radio show.
Number one.
Right.
But speaking of talking in that Black Power era, what was it like not only being alive in that time, but also being such an active participant and listening to Malcolm X speak in person?
Yes, I was 14 years old when my father took my brother and I to see Malcolm X open up for Elijah Muhammad. So I sat there, 14 years old, seeing both these men. And to be honest, it changed me. And one of the things I'm most proud of in my political and cultural development, when I joined us, we created Kwanzaa. That's still today. You know, that was 50 years ago.
Wow.
So, you know, I'm 71, so it's like,
You're telling
Put it on that. I know, right?
I'm bragging on myself. No, 71, I'm glad I'm here. A lot of cats ain't here, you know.
That's so
But
true.
Kwanzaa is it's a Kiswahili word,
Yes.
and so is your surname.
Yes, my name Mtume means messenger, you know, as music messenger.
And you are the musical messenger.
Yes.
I love that.
And even from the baby, you've been surrounded by music. Is that why
my
your
God.
parents chose that name for you? Both your father and your stepfather.
Yes. And I always give this story, you know, as a kid, 9, 10 years old, I grow up, sometimes at dinner, there's Dizzy Gillespie, there's Miles Davis.
Wait, chilling at the dinner table?
This is Thelonious Monk.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
10-year-old kid growing up
That
with
is
that,
amazing.
plus I'm growing up with R&B's just developing, Motown's just coming in, you know.
So it would have been quite weird if you turned out to be a lawyer.
They're like, what happened?
You know? But not your ways do better than this.
If I did turn to law, I would try to be the most artistic lawyer I could find.
Exactly.
But you know, it's interesting you say those things. You just drop names like, oh yeah, they're at dinner table.
know?
But when you were a kid, did you realize what was happening? Did you take it for granted?
No, you know what it is? You're too young to digest the total atmosphere that you're in. But I was real clear about one thing. These were the most brilliant minds I'd ever heard. And after dinner, they would talk about music. Just to sit there and listen to Thelonious Monk talk about the chords, or Dizzy Gillespie talking about how he played a line or an experience he had with Charlie Parker. This is crazy. And then as I grow up, I end up playing with some of them.
That is
I
amazing.
played with, well, obviously with Miles. I played with Miles for 5 years. As a matter of fact, my father and myself and my stepfather all played with Miles.
Wow.
Really?
So
It's a
did you
family
do the
affair.
same thing for your sons?
Huh?
Do they walk down and see Aretha
I've
Franklin just
never-
sitting at the
right.
table?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't really have that much association with music outside of my band and the studio.
Right.
Most of my kids grew up with political people coming to the house. You know,
Okay, so your new podcast, is it going to be more political, more music driven?
it's
Tell
going
us
to be
about that.
everything. I'm going to be co-hosting it with my nephew Kevin, another Pakistani journalist, Nitha Khan, and then my son will be producing it. Fa Mtume. So it's going to be 360. It's not going to just
We
be
like that.
politics.
Coaching on it. So talk to us about the unique selling point of this podcast. What separates it from all the other podcasts? out there?
Intergenerational conversation. One of the things I feel that hinders a lot of real conversation and exchange is that it's too divided by age. Okay, and we're going to have young guests. Well, my nephew's 40, Nitha's 30-something. I'm 71. My son is 40, and then we're going to be bringing guests. You know, I have my granddaughter's going to be involved. You know, she's very bright, politically astute. So we're going to have 20-something-year-old because
I love that.
there has to be what I call the connection of the cultural continuity. Okay, and different ages. I find too much division of this is the old heads, this is the young group.
Yep.
Why don't we mix it? Because that's one of the things that's missing in the music.
Absolutely.
If you have all age with no youth, your glass is half empty. All youth with no age, your glass is half full. Right now, we got half a glass of music.
Hey,
like
all right
that.
now. Speaking of intergenerational conversations, you were recently on The Breakfast Club, and you had the most positive response from all the young viewers, all the young listeners.
Well,
what
yeah.
did that feel like for you to transcend?
I
those
tell you,
borders?
I was shocked because when my son called me, he said, "Go this thing," you know, because I did it, and I wasn't even sure. I was like, "What am I doing here?" You know, this is a young, would they even be interested in what I'm saying? And the next day, he said, "Go on YouTube." He said, and he's never said this to me. He said, "Read the responses."
Oh, wow.
And I was, to respond to your question, I was blown away.
I can imagine.
I was blown away because I wasn't so sure where the interview was going to go, and one of the guys was putting on his coat. I was like,
You're like, where you going? We ain't done.
but it turned out to be really, really good. And these are the kind of conversations I'm really comfortable with. I want to talk to young people. I'm already old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to
So
talk
you
to
want to impart some of the wisdom that you've learned over the years, or
yeah,
back in
sure.
my day type of
Oh,
conversations?
And and I always say this to young artists. One of the things I think needs to be emphasized a lot more is for young artists to find their sound. Sometimes it's too much what I call cookie cutter music.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
somebody comes out with a hit, and then the next day you wake up, it's 30 people singing the same way.
Yep.
No. Find, the best thing, it was Oscar Wilde, who's a great witticism. He said, be yourself, because everybody else is already taken.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a good point, and it seems easier said than done because the industry, it seems like they want to hear something that's bankable. They know they
Yes.
work for Justin Timberlake, so
Yes.
Justin Bieber has to do it, so
Yeah.
this person has to do it. How can they find that sound that's their own and still be able to get signed or sell records and things like that?
It's what your value is, and what I mean by that. Art is about pushing the boundaries. You got to know the difference between being a product and a brand and being an artist. Okay? And I think too many young people have become locked into being a brand, and so they can put out something and everybody buys it because it's so-and-so. I don't go for that. Is it good?
Yes.
And the more young artists that begin to do that, that's how you change the foundation. That's how you change and alter the landscape. Okay? I say this to people. I say, man, you know what? If Prince tried to get signed today, probably nobody would sign him because he would be too different. But that's what you want to find in art.
Authenticity.
It's about finding the difference in the familiar.
Wow.
What is it that you do that separates you from everybody else? Not what you do that makes you sound like everybody else.
Right.
What makes you different?
I love that.
Right?
Oh,
Just
wow.
dropping the jewels.
You know,
Bam, bam.
Here's the jewel, here's the jewel. I feel like everyone's just giving out goodness today.
We'll take it.
But you know, I actually read yesterday that Migos, you know the group Migos?
Yes.
They have the same amount of records on the Hit 100 as the Beatles did. And they're completely different genres of music. So talk to me about the young artists that you're currently listening to.
Well, you know, come on, Kendrick. I mean, Kendrick Lamar, man.
All right.
I mean, you know, again, we're talking about somebody who comes along with the difference in the familiar. And I just think, and what I found so interesting about him, I was very attracted to the music. And then when I saw him perform, I think it was a couple of years ago at the Grammy, I was like, oh, there it is.
And then again this year.
Yeah,
Yes.
but 2 years ago, or whatever.
blew
that
everyone
was
away.
like, when he did that, and it was Compton.
Yeah.
But I found out later, I was reading an interview by him, and he said something that I found very interesting. He said, well, he grew up in a jazz household. He said all his parents played was John Coltrane and Miles Davis. Then it made sense to me. Just, okay? And I think that's the molding you're going to start seeing. It ain't going to be all just sampling. These young people are getting more and more creative. And like I said, more and more of them are traveling with bands. Kendrick has a band.
Yep.
Yeah.
So soon we'll hear less booty on the radio waves.
Well, I don't know if the booty will go down, but you know, it'll be more colorful.
Colorful booty.
Well, you definitely always bring color to your music. So, and you've done again so much in your long career. What do you want to be remembered most for? In about 70 more years when you leave the earth, you know.
Tried to be different.
Succeeded.
Yeah. You've done that. Been there, done that.
Right? What next?
It ain't over till it's over. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair enough.
It ain't over till you sang.
Oh, okay.
It ain't about the fat lady no more.
No more.
I love how my accent suddenly becomes so American. I just want to feel among.
Work it.
Yeah, it's contagious.
That is amazing stuff. So you have to tell us where and when we can catch your podcast.
Well, we're gonna. I'll make sure that my publicist Angelo Ellaby will contact you because we're putting everything together right now. We're planning on starting somewhere between the next 30 and 45 days.
All right.
But I'll let you know because it's going to be dynamite.
I'm sure we are going to hear of it even before your publicist gives us the information because the streets will be talking.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Absolute legend.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
You take care.
We will be right back with more Rise Entertainment 360. Thank you.
Great, thank you.